Chapter 554. All right, Luo Nan admitted that there was a problem with the lesson plan and it was a problem with his attitude. He had suffered a series of shocks that night, so he really did not have the mood to ponder over words and logic. It was inevitable that his writing was somewhat random. Now, after the baptism of the word I and the study of the instruction manual, he could not bear to look at this lesson plan again. New ideas and old ideas were mixed together, and logical contradictions could be seen everywhere. There were also a few words that were almost sleep-talking. At the time they had frightened worker Zhai, but they couldn't escape Her Majesty Empress Wu's sharp eyes. Courting death. Luo Nan scratched his head again. There was nothing much to say. He needed to completely discard his old train of thought. But where should he start to articulate his new ideas? He didn't care about the environment in the venue. Under the watchful eyes of the audience, he opened his notebook and wrote on the flexible e-ink screen. Unfortunately, he fell into a cycle of denial, and denial. He couldn't help but poke his forehead with his pen, feeling very distressed. Muffled laughter resounded throughout the venue. The live broadcast room was even more straightforward. Once again the screen was flooded with crying laughing emojis. At this moment the number of viewers in the live broadcast room had climbed to 25,000. It was infinitely close to the peak of a battle between two extraordinaries. As for the content of the live broadcast, strictly speaking, it was nothing more than a small thesis written by an awakened. In the end, worker Zhai was still somewhat affected. The speed at which he read out the materials increased. Soon he finished reading out the draft full of data, and the time for the exchange began. Now it was He Yuan's turn to host the exchange. Of course, this kind of activity would definitely have actors, and the questions had also been carefully designed. After the two shills spoke one after another, an outer member finally asked about the specific details of cultivation, and things were on the right track. But this time would not last too long. After all, whether it was the outer members or the busybodies, the true meat of the show lay with Luo Nan. There were quite a few people who intentionally interfered during normal communication time, hoping to get Luo Nan involved. Fortunately, He Yuan methodically controlled the pace of the venue and didn't give those people any chance. Luo Nan thanked He Yuan for her help, but he wasn't able to take this opportunity to completely straighten out his train of thought. He continued to write one word at a time, drawing one word at a time and spinning in circles on the spot. Just as he was in a dilemma, a new message arrived on the psychic wave network. Luo Nan didn't dare to ignore it anymore. He immediately opened it. Unexpectedly, the information actually came from He Yuan. It was a cloud document that had just been created. The collaborative editing mode had already been activated, and a portion of the introductory words had already been written on it. Looking at the tone, it was clearly meant for Luo Nan. Without a doubt, this was He Yuan's handiwork. She was the host, controlling the rhythm of the venue, and at the same time she rushed it out. Luo Nan subconsciously raised his head to look at the lady in formal attire beside him. However, the latter did not have any extra expression on his face. He did not even look him in the eye. He only gave an explanation to the train of thought in the private channel. The situation is rather chaotic now, and the beginning is not favorable. It's best to use self-deprecation and humor to eliminate the negative impressions of most people. It's better to be honest. As for what to say next, you don't need to worry about it. If you can't think of anything at the moment, you can use your own experience to tell a story. If you have any inspiration, you can use it on the spot. Don't be nervous, your own experience is already legendary. Is that what you think of me? Luo Nan held back for a few seconds. In the end, he wasn't able to ask this question. He just said, "Thank you." Afterwards, he didn't have the time to think about the gap between people. He seized the time to familiarize himself with the script. It must be said that the human mind was very strange. It wasn't that Luo Nan didn't have anything in his mind before. It was just that he couldn't find a suitable entry point when he wanted to express his thoughts. The opening that He Yuan had drafted for him now appeared to be just a few polite words. It didn't touch upon any substantive theoretical content, but after sweeping a few glances, he inexplicably had some context in his mind. Time flew by quickly. Even though He Yuan was multitasking, she was able to steadily extend the time of worker Zhai's exchange to 25 minutes. This was already the limit. The noise within the venue grew noisier and noisier. Everyone's patience had already been worn down. He Yuan finally turned her gaze over. Luonan took a deep breath and gave her a slight nod. Only now did he completely pull his attention away from the words in the cloud document. He cast his gaze towards the podium not too far away. It was strange. The instant his gaze focused, he suddenly couldn't even hear He Yuan's introduction of him clearly. His mind was buzzing. Was he nervous? Not really. His thoughts were still quite clear. It was just that his brain was a bit congested physiologically. The reason wasn't because he was shy or timid. Instead, it was because of a thought that had just become clear. Wasn't this an opportunity? He Yuan's gaze fell onto his body once more. At the same time, she gestured with her hand, indicating that he should climb onto the podium. Luonan stood up completely by following his instincts. The rhythm of his footsteps was a bit rushed. In the end, he collided with the podium, causing the wooden cabinet to slightly sway. The laughter below the podium grew louder. Luonan cast his gaze forward, watching the color changes in the mental world of the attendees. At the same time, he also watched the cloud of smoke formed by the tens of thousands of strands of soul strength that shot over from every corner of the globe under the effect of the information field. 27,000 people. After a rough calculation and rounding, Luonan came up with an approximate number. This number was admittedly not worth mentioning when compared to the millions and tens of millions of live streams in the secular world. But in the inner world, it represented that he possessed a chance to face nearly a third of the members of the main circle. He could use the most direct method to express his thoughts as he pleased. He actually didn't think of this before. Pfft. Luonan gently placed the notebook on the podium and flipped to the flexible e-ink screen page. The screen lit up and he opened the drawing software to create a new page, causing it to appear in the form of a virtual workspace. This domain of light blue light was magnified by the most advanced projection system in the circular conference room, and it appeared behind him. Luonan subconsciously raised his pen after completing this process. He wrote the 3 words condensation ring in the workspace. The words were neat and tidy, but they still carried a hint of immaturity. They were magnified several dozen times, and they were reflected into the vision of nearly 30,000 people inside and outside the venue. Luonan wanted to continue writing, but he finally remembered that he hadn't said the polite opening words yet. He forcefully stopped his pen strokes, took a deep breath, and raised his head to face the tens of thousands of visible and invisible gazes. Today's topic is this. I read the script that worker Zhai read just now the night before yesterday. There should be quite a few words of thanks in there, all for me. Actually, I was just sharpening my spear at the last minute. I wasn't really listening. If I'm being overly sentimental, please point it out, everyone. Laughter rang out from below the stage, mixed with applause and whistles. The atmosphere was quite complicated, but the breaths of over 1,000 people merged together, colliding and canceling each other out. The overall atmosphere was quite harmonious and the atmosphere was enthusiastic. Luonan hadn't expected such a self-mocking, self-exploding tone. He relied entirely on He Yuan's script. He was a bit stiff when he read it, but the effect was pretty good for now. Luonan didn't continue to act like a good child. Words that were too clever didn't conform to his personality. He quickly entered the main topic. Actually, worker Zhai's success was first and foremost due to his own hard work. I just gave him a suggestion. Actually, it was just the result of a sudden idea I had on the second day after coming into contact with the condensation ring, out of admiration and conviction towards this marvelous structure. And I didn't directly give the suggestion to worker Zhai. Instead, I just blurted it out while chatting with Brother Papercut. Luonan had already begun to display his abilities from the start of these words. After all, He Yuan's script didn't touch upon his personal details. Luonan followed the suggestion of telling a story and supplemented it. Needless to say, it went quite smoothly as he spoke. Luonan clearly felt that it was quite good, but he didn't expect a commotion to suddenly arise in the venue. A large number of people were whispering to each other. The buzzing noise had already affected the effect of the speech. He was stunned for a moment. He wasn't able to continue speaking. He Yuan had no choice but to come out and control the situation. Everyone, please maintain silence. If you have any questions, please wait until the question and answer session. Her control of the crowd was somewhat effective, but not everyone was an obedient child. There was a person in the front row who suddenly jumped up. His hand was raised extremely high. You said that it was the second day after coming into contact with the condensation ring, But worker Zhai just said that he received this suggestion last month. This fellow spoke too quickly. He himself had forgotten the specific time. Luckily, there were some people in the venue who still remembered. They shouted, 6th. 6th of November. Yes, 6th of November. Then here's the question. How long have you been cultivating with the condensation ring? Luonan was stunned for 2 seconds. His train of thought, which he had managed to organize with great difficulty, was nearly interrupted. He still had some ability to respond to emergencies. He faced the person in the front row and smiled. Wait a moment. Let me look at the calendar. As he spoke, he actually cut out the interface of the drawing software. He used the calendar software that came with the flexible e-ink screen to look up the calendar. After seeing the specific date, memories of the past few days flashed back one after another. Yes, 5th of November, Monday. My friends and I were at Aurora Cloud City. That night, Tian Bang and Mo Lun fought. Brother Papercut and I discussed this matter a bit earlier that day. As for the time I've been in contact with the ring, Brother Papercut knows the best. It's only been a day, right? That's number 3. Yes, it's number 3. Papercut, who was sitting in the front row, raised his hand in response. He feigned calmness as he faced the camera, welcoming the gazes of over 1,000 people. I was learning soul activation techniques from Brother Papercut during those few days. I asked him if he had any big moves. He introduced me to the RT-8313 mission issued by Her Majesty Empress Wu. Luonan gave a simple introduction of the situation at the time. At the same time, he felt that this was really telling a story. It just so happened to meet his requirements and it connected with the rest of the story. Number 3 heard about the dripping sword. Number 4 watched Her Majesty Empress Wu's demonstration video and began to practice. So, I've only been in contact with the condensation ring for a month. Oh, it's been exactly 40 days since today. So, if you really want me to talk about why the condensation ring is so miraculous and can help worker Zhai awaken, I have no way of telling you. You should go ask Her Majesty Empress Wu. This was supposed to be a joking point, but there was a reaction in the venue. Everyone was buzzing with discussion. It was for no other reason than the 40 days that Luonan spoke of. That's right. How long has this guy been in the circle? 40 days of cultivation on the podium. I must have heard a fake lesson. Today's lesson ends here. Let's listen to Boss Luo brag. Isn't there a rumor that his dripping sword is very powerful? Rumor. What's the rumor? Number 800 Manslayer. Hee your sister. If you have the guts, why don't you try becoming a humanoid infrasonic array? That's right. You can do whatever you want with a B-rank danger rating. Hee. All sorts of trash talk filled the venue. And in another dimension, a new revelation appeared. Hurry up and look at the Society's main forum. Mission thread RT-8313. Xianxia's live broadcast program was open to all ability users from all over the world. However, there were quite a few people who didn't like to chat with others in the live broadcast room. Instead, they were used to climbing the discussion forums. Just as Luonan was giving his explanation regarding November 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, a female ID called Pandora suddenly appeared in the recently extremely active RT-8313 mission thread. She used a large sum of money to buy several eye-catching props such as highlighting, homepage, stickers, and subtopics. She attracted the netizens who were still wandering in the forums. She also attracted the recent popular character, Ari. Pandora spoke like this. November 4th. What a marvelous day. I suddenly want to skin you. The netizens who were familiar with the recent trend of topics immediately understood what she was talking about. Quite a few people became excited in an instant. The stench of blood is thick. Take a front row seat. Sit on the bench and watch the goddess swing her blade. I want to see a technical post. Where's God Ari? You're about to be skinned. Ari soon appeared as well. He was a bit baffled. As the heir of a famous family in the inner world and the disciple of the extraordinary Gong Qi, he always acted in a high-profile manner. He casually posted a selfie. How do you want to skin me with this face? Speaking of which, is she a beauty? If she's a beauty, I'll let you take liberties with her. After a chaotic prelude, someone finally pointed to the main topic. Speaking of which, what's up with November 4th? This day sounds familiar. Did I come to the wrong venue? Eat my teleportation gate. Soon, a link to Zhangji's live broadcast room randomly popped up. It informed a portion of the autistic people about the current hottest topic. A few seconds passed before Ari spoke again. This time he posted the most popular smiley crying emoji of the day. Thanks for the reminder. November 4th is truly a marvelous day. He immediately uploaded a newly completed screenshot with a link. The screenshot looked very familiar. It was actually a record of a post in this forum. The date on it was clearly November 4th, 2096. The speaker's ID appeared to be anonymous, but the post he left behind was the most popular post on the society's forums. Practicing for an entire morning in exchange for rain. Then there was a picture. It was a bedding being hung out to dry and the faint outline of a human-shaped watermark. Then there was a clip taken from the live broadcast program. Luo Nan said, "On the 4th, watch Her Majesty Empress Wu's demonstration video and begin practicing." Chapter 555. After Ari made the direction clear, Pandora's skinning was no longer of any significance. However, as the fuse, that person still silently uploaded a screenshot. Just like Ari, she also took a screenshot of the time record. However, it wasn't the time of the speech but the time of the registration. 3 consecutive screenshots. One was September 30th, 1922. The other 2 were on October 1st, 1922. The 3 screenshots showed different page formats. Although it felt good to curse from afar, there were still a large number of self-proclaimed technical skullduggery on the internet. They preferred to smash their enemies in the face with a solid hammer. Pandora only showed the pictures without saying a word, but there were many professionals who jumped out to help explain. Expert 1, 2 from the 1st of October. One is from the headquarters database page, and the other is from the association's forum page. Both of them are connected. Looking at the time, we can basically confirm that it's the same person. Immediately after, Expert 2 said, September 30th should have been dug out from Xia City's Psychic Wave Network database. I've seen this interface before. Expert 3 soon appeared as well. F*CK, the truth is already very clear, okay? In Xia City, when you register with the Psychic Wave Network, you will also register with Headquarters database. It's just that there will be a 24-hour verification period in between. It just so happens to be October 1st. He's the same person from the start. That's right. With the way the association hasn't been able to recruit even one new person every 10 days or half a month, the concept of different people joining the association at the same time is close to zero. In fact, there's no such thing. Ari, who was also an insider, came out again and released the real-time records of the headquarters database. At the same time, she marked all the important points on anonymous speech record. The registration time and the time of the speech were exactly the same. A solid hammer. A solid hammer. A solid hammer. Dang 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 dang, we have witnessed history. The #1 bragging genius in the history of the inner world, the spokesperson of summer bragging, Mr. Luonan the Sprinkler Man. What exactly happened on the first day of Xia Chue's practice of the dripping sword? Do you have any brothers who were present at the venue to help us ask? The main forum of the association was in a frenzy, and a storm was brewing on the internet in the inner world. Squirt Man's true body has appeared. Xia Chue is the leading figure of the new generation. Hee, a B+ danger level expert is laughing while stroking the dog's head. Geniuses look at you from the clouds while you roll around in a cesspool. The debates on the internet were never based on facts, but on one's standpoint and one's butt. Especially the current RT-8313 mission post. Its nature had become a highly popular regional post. When the hot content in the post exploded, it was time for everyone to pick a side. The pro-headquarters faction centered in Chan City, where the headquarters of the society was located, and the pro-Xia faction centered in Xia City, the eye of the storm. They used the most intimate and appropriate terms to greet each other's relatives intensively. They also threw explosive words like discrimination dog and Xia Chue at each other's faces. But when it came to the real world, the situation was a little more complicated. Many people in the venue had participated in this map cannon battle. The majority of the members were of Xia City and the outstanding cohesiveness of the Xia City branch. They basically stood on Luo Nan's side in the debate just now. However, this was only from their standpoint. As for what they were thinking in their hearts, it was hard to say. Right now, they were hoping that Luo Nan could give them some substantial artillery support, allowing them to return to the network and go on a killing spree. People always wanted to hear the answer they most wanted to hear, and if they couldn't, Mr. Luo, are you the squirt man or not? In the end, not everyone was willing to be ostriches. While Luo Nan continued to narrate the details of his marriage with the condensation ring from the podium, a certain righteous person acted as the person who pierced through the window paper. He stood up to face Luo Nan and the thousands of gazes in the venue. His voice was loud and clear, and everyone in the venue could hear him. What do you think of the skinning in RT8313 post? Skinning. Luo Nan was focused on teaching. How could he have the leisure to pay attention to the situation online? However, he had heard Zhang Yingying mention the name Squirt Man before. He couldn't help but laugh. What's wrong? Is that Ari stirring up trouble again? The venue exploded. She didn't deny it. It's really him. That's not the point, okay? How did you make that human-shaped watermark? It really was the first day of training. It was the first day, yes, but Tank's meat was stinky at that time. Do you need me to explain what a human-shaped infrasonic array is? Does infrasonic waves have anything to do with the dripping sword? Right now no one was paying attention to Luo Nan's class. Instead they were discussing the topic of the squirt man. A heated debate was launched. And all of this was streamed onto the internet under Zhang Ji's live camera. It was for people to watch and comment. The class had clearly gone out of control. Luo Nan was a bit helpless. He tilted his head and simply opened up the main forum to look at the controversy online. His first thought after finding the key node was, who is Pandora? And the following topics were actually meaningless. Luo Nan skimmed through them. The more he read, the more relaxed he became. He even wanted to laugh in the end. He raised his head and looked around the venue. What attracted his attention right now wasn't the online discussion and controversy. Instead, it was the gorgeous and chaotic mental world that was surrounded by a marvelous force field. Though Luo Nan could only see a corner of Xia City in this global debate, he was able to see the big picture from a small clue. Only an extremely small number of people maintained a clear mind. The vast majority of people were completely lost in the whirlpool of group consciousness. From Luo Nan's perspective, this marvelous phenomenon was precisely the reason why the mental world was devoid of order and meaning. He felt relaxed. Perhaps behind this was a rather subtle feeling of superiority. It wasn't that he was more brilliant than other people. It was that he was able to clearly see the crux of the problem. There were many things that could be said in the face of this. In fact, he really did produce a series of inspirations. After sorting them out, he gradually understood how he should continue his own class. He turned his head to glance at He Yueyin and smiled at her. He was a bit embarrassed. I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'm going to go off script. In the next moment he forcefully clapped his hands. The resounding sound of clapping attracted the gazes of most people in the venue. It also made him directly face the different gazes of over 1,000 people. Luo Nan took a breath and revealed a smile. That spray pot guy is unrelated to this class. It won't be too late for me to answer when I have time after class. But I just looked at the relevant online discussion just now and remembered something. There's something I didn't do properly. Did he want to shrink back? This was the instant thought of many people. However, Luo Nan's intentions weren't like this. I want to ask something. Whether it's the dripping sword or the condensation ring, who amongst you has truly cultivated? What I mean is that you spend a certain amount of time and energy to practice every day. You constantly raise your skill and proficiency. Is there anyone? Luo Nan saw that everyone in the venue looked at each other in dismay, but not many people responded. Luo Nan felt a great sense of familiarity towards this. This situation was very similar to his many years in school and classes. It was just that in the past he was below the stage. Now he was on the stage. His gaze roamed around the venue. Seeing that no one responded, he imitated the teachers and laughed. Let's do a simple count. Right now there are 1,477 people in this venue. It's like I said just now. How many of you are seriously cultivating the dripping sword? Please raise your hand. In the front row, Zhang Yingying's heart calmed down a bit. She felt that it was very strange. How does he know the number of people in the venue? Papercut looked left and right next to her. Is there no one raising their hand? Bamboo Pole shrugged. There are quite a few people who train in the dripping sword, but the number of people who truly use it as a trump card is few. I usually use it to train my concentration. How can I spend time on it every day? It was just as Bamboo Pole said. There were only a few people who raised their hands in the entire venue. Luo Nan sighed and relaxed the conditions. Then every week. Those who practice more than 10 times a month, please raise your hand. There were quite a few more people this time. There were 70 to 80 people. Bamboo pole and paper cut were among them. Those who understand the dripping sword, those who want to practice it, and those who don't want to practice it, don't. Who else? This time there were more than 100 of them. Adding them up, they had pretty much included all the spiritual type awakened in the hall. There were also some awakened who took the fleshly body test, as well as the non-awakened who made up 60 to 70% of the people in the venue. They were completely unimportant. Luo Nan wrote down the results of the count in his work area. He made a simple comparison and came to a conclusion. From this result, can I say that 99% of the people in this venue actually know very little about the dripping sword? Or maybe they only know a little about it. And this is Xia City. This is Her Majesty Empress Wu's headquarters. If we use the results of the survey just now as a sampling, then can we say that there aren't many people in the inner world who truly understand the dripping sword? In other words, everyone needs to first catch up on common sense. The subtext was, then what are you blindly babbling for? Too many people made up these words in their minds. Zhang Yingying was one of them. She leaned back and said, he did it on purpose, right? Bamboo pole had a pensive look. It's scary if he didn't do it on purpose. Papercut turned to look at the reaction of the venue once more. In the end, he shrunk his head back and laughed bitterly. I feel like secretary, he should seize the moment to control the scene. Even though this was the home ground, the faces of the attendees weren't looking good. However, He Yuan, who was in the waiting area, still sat there even though she was frowning a bit. She didn't have any intentions of appearing. Then let's start with common sense. Luo Nan's performance on the podium was becoming more and more natural at this time. He cut the complicated and simplified it. He pointed to the 3 words in the work area. Just as I wrote this word, the topic of our class tonight is the condensation ring. Why this is because the condensation ring is the most valuable of the 5 basic structures of the dripping sword. Only the structure of the condensation ring is a configuration that truly possesses extraordinary significance. It breaks through the barrier between the material and mental planes on the microscopic plane. Oh right, the word configuration must be emphasized. As he spoke, Luo Nan added the word configuration to the back of the condensation ring. It's not the same thing as the configuration from the physical and chemical perspective. Those who are educated might laugh, but I didn't make up this word. I heard it from Jack. This person. You guys know him, right? A portion of the people nodded, but there were still 60 to 70% of the attendees, as well as the majority of the people watching the live broadcast and browsing the forums, who expressed their opinions. Should I know? Which theoretical master? The king of the world who placed the cross. Forgive me for not understanding the joke above. Okay, I'll ask seriously. Does anyone know who this onion is? It's the old onion that was uprooted by Boss Luo. That's right. It's a gang leader that the Xia City branch dealt with some time ago. Luo Nan was deeply involved. There were people who didn't understand. There were people who introduced, but no one was as direct as Luo Nan. The tip of his pen moved quickly within the work area. He used professional-level sketching techniques to sketch out Jack's upper body, especially the implanted electronic eye. Its cold and bizarre mechanical structure was drawn by Luo Nan in a vivid and lifelike manner. Amazing. Is this the legendary drawing is better than telling? You don't say. I've actually seen this fellow before. The reaction of the audience was quite positive, driven by his superb technique. Luo Nan didn't care about this. He just hoped that the attendees would focus their attention and enter his rhythm. Back then, this person expressed a concept called soul configuration in large quantities. It has many similarities with the formatting theory that I've always believed in and practiced. That's why I have a deep impression of it. But now I know that this concept has a very wide range of applications. It includes the human mind and the fleshly body as well as external mechanical equipment and so on. All of these can be constructed into this structural model. I believe that it corresponds to the concept of supernatural powers of the inner world. Perhaps it can be said that the configuration is the structural foundation of supernatural powers. The reaction of the audience was a bit stiff. Luo Nan's description was far too vague, but the concept linked to it truly touched upon the fundamental definition of the inner world. Luonan didn't wait for people to react. He emphasized a step further. From a broad sense, my format is a type of configuration. The fleshly body and mental structures are a type of configuration. All structures that can lead to supernatural powers are all types of configurations. Someone finally reacted at this time. They didn't raise their hands. They just stood up and retorted, "I want to ask Mr. Luo. On what basis are you saying this? Are you using a specious and fabricated concept to explain supernatural powers?" The audience grew restless once more. But before this could happen, Luonan circled the word configuration. This word is nothing more than a code name. I said it before. I'm just borrowing it. I'm not the inventor. That Jack shouldn't be the inventor either. The true inventor. Perhaps Quantum Corporation? Luonan swept his gaze towards a certain seat in front of the podium. He continued to speak. After all, that Jack has quite a deep relationship with them. The company's research and development project had a batch of living test subjects handled by Jack. The vast majority of them died in the underground fighting arena that he opened. My family's newly adopted Ray-Wen was the only one who was spared. Quantum Corporation living test subjects, Miss 2000s. These terms all had complex backgrounds and large amounts of information. It smashed the audience members to the point of being dizzy and disoriented. And so Luonan continued to fill in the details. "Oh, when we first met, Jack was just an altered human. But he obtained a dynamo core from Quantum Corporation and transformed into a burner. Frankly speaking, it was a very marvelous experience. Oh my, he's learned to stab people in the back." Zhang Yingying felt greatly gratified. She also felt that Luonan's performance during this time was all right. At the very least, he wasn't stumbling and unable to speak. Her mood relaxed a bit and she looked towards the back. Unfortunately, the observer called Long 7 was quite scheming. He chuckled as he leaned back in his seat. His body language was extremely relaxed. It seemed that what Luonan said had nothing to do with him. At this time, someone in the corner of the venue raised their hand and stood up. This was already Luonan's default behavior in the classroom. And this person looked to be an outer member. He was 30 or 40 years old and he had an ignorant expression. "Excuse me, what is a dynamo core? I'll talk about it next." Luonan smiled at the person. "Right now, I know that there aren't many people in this venue who have an intuitive understanding of the condensation ring. The configuration I talked about just now is quite superficial. Then we need an example. The dynamo core is quite good." As he spoke, Luonan added a bracket behind the configuration. Inside the bracket was the word dynamo core. Quantum Corporation and the military should be the biggest users of the dynamo core. This is because it can be said to be the operating core of burners and deep blue walkers. Luonan didn't wait for the outer members who had just heard of this matter to digest before he explained further. The dynamo core is actually a complex mechanical configuration that can guide the extension of energy. To put it bluntly, it can use its own unique structure to propel energy from the A domain to the B domain to carry out transmission and transformation. This transmission and transformation has the meaning of extraordinary power. At its most basic, it can realize the highly efficient transformation of energy forms. I've seen a type of elementary dynamo core before. It doesn't have any other abilities, but it's located inside a Tai Chi ball that's half the height of a person. It can store and transform the striking power of the outside world, ultimately forming an effect similar to magnetic levitation. He Yuan glanced over from the waiting area as he spoke. Luonan didn't mind. He began to move his pen in the work area, drawing out the rough structure of the simplest dynamo core. He and worker Zhai had researched this toy for a long time. This wasn't an engineering drawing, so drawing a simple diagram was no problem at all. It took a dozen or so seconds for the results to appear. The participants glanced at it and then moved to the side. Luonan didn't stop. He continued to speak. "It's a bit more complicated. The dynamo core can also realize the effects of telepathic control. It can transform a person's conscious activity into commands that can be understood by machinery, realizing absolute and precise control. Everyone is quite familiar with this. It's like a portion of the functions of the deep blue walker system." The buzzing sound of discussion never ceased in the conference room. They really wanted to see Luonan reproduce it. But Luonan shrugged his shoulders. "Unfortunately, I haven't researched the real thing. I'll talk about it for the time being. Everyone just needs to listen." a bit more advanced. It can push material power into the mental plane. From there, it can realize sufficient interference between the mental and material planes. Jack has done this. Alright, what's the model of the dynamo core called? Luo Nan turned to look at He Yuan as he spoke. She simply responded, Deep Sea Type 4. Yes, Deep Sea Type 4. I've seen this before. It forms a Tower of Babel that leads from the material plane to the mental plane. Oh, here it's called Mount Buzhou. That's fine too. Luo Nan said a joke that wasn't funny. Then his digital pen dropped down, sketching lines. But the first thing that formed under his pen was the outline of a human body that wasn't related to the structure of the dynamo core. He used dotted lines to represent it, but the 3D structure was extremely clear. It wasn't the slightest bit worse than the software. The human body was in a cross-legged position. Its hands and feet were visible. It was like a tower or a bell. Luo Nan used 40 to 50 seconds to complete this simple outline. This is equivalent to us. We have the aptitude for extraordinary power, but we haven't formed an effective structure. Then Luo Nan began to draw solid lines on the outline. This time it was the configuration of the dynamo core, but his pen was more cautious. It was no longer a simple diagram but rather a circuit diagram. It was extremely neat. This way a lot of time would be consumed. And after the novelty of the sketching technique wore off, people would inevitably feel a bit bored, especially when the rhythm was bad. The discussion within the venue grew louder. Not to mention others, even Zhang Ji, who had always been conscientious in doing live broadcasts, felt that there was something to talk about. What the hell is he doing? She spoke to herself and immediately stirred up a storm of approval in the live broadcast. The words were even more intense. These were all people who had been stifled by Luo Nan's lecture on big information. I thought he was going to explode when he spoke those wild words just now. I also thought this bro was going to slap faces. But in the end he just drew after a single disagreement? Xiaochui's elegant demeanor. A self-drawing psychopath. Bad review. I'm going to switch channels if he keeps drawing like this. Zhang Ji felt a bit of a headache when she saw the bad omen in the live broadcast room. She could only change the camera angle and look around the venue, letting the audience in the live broadcast room see the atmosphere. It must be said that there was a problem with the rhythm of Luo Nan's lecture. This was related to the fact that his lesson plan had been rejected and he had to display it on the spot. Right now, the attention of the attendees was rarely placed on the incomprehensible lines. They were whispering to each other or going online in various forms to understand the latest situation. Zhang Ji even saw a few yawning people. She was about to do a close-up when she caught a glimpse of a slight change in the silhouette next to them. Her heart stirred slightly and she shifted the camera angle to Long 7. She saw this observer of Quantum Corporation, a deep blue walker who straddled the two domains of burner and ability user, no longer sit in a relaxed and casual manner. He straightened his back and locked his eyebrows. He stared at the podium without blinking. Right now, Luo Nan's pen tip was constantly forming new lines, connecting layers of structures within the human silhouette. Long 7's eyeballs moved slightly along with the appearance of the lines. Apart from this, his entire body was frozen like a stone statue. Long 7's appearance caused the 30,000 viewers in the live broadcast room to be a bit surprised. But Luo Nan's voice rang out once more just as the mocking, teasing and awakening words appeared on the screen. The long drawing process was finally over. That's more or less it. This Tower of Babel really is worth introducing. From it, we can see how the internal energy and scattered thoughts of the human body on the material plane can be gathered together and transformed onto the mental plane. Of course, we still need to give it a bit more power. Can we increase the power a bit? I'm saying increase the brightness a bit. The brightness of the projected work area clearly increased following Luo Nan's command, becoming a bit glaring. Everyone subconsciously narrowed their eyes, but they saw the dotted silhouette formed from lines sway a few times in the work area. Then it stood up. A muffled exclamation came from the conference room. They saw the dotted silhouette stretch out its arms and legs, making a few fist stances. And within the line structure of the so-called Tower of Babel, light flowed like flowing water. It divided and guided, rotated and coiled. It was like the skeleton and nerves of the human body, supporting a marvelous life formed from lines of lustrous light. Luo Nan smiled in satisfaction when he saw his most recent work. He had learned this technique from the Order of Justice. He had used it to make a high imitation of the human-faced arachnid. Now he had modified it a bit to highlight the visual effects. This is our teaching assistant for tonight. You can call it number 1. Zhang Ji subconsciously went wow under the overall atmosphere of the venue, but she didn't feel too amazed in her heart. There were far too many peripheral members in the venue. Their overall experience was lacking. It must be known that creating this kind of visual effect was really nothing for an awakened. She thought for a bit and gave her evaluation to the 30,000 viewers in the live broadcast room, a very beautiful magic trick. Chapter 556. As an outstanding anchor, Zhang Ji was always able to listen to the wise opinions of the guests. This was because she could roughly distinguish the truth of the guests' words. Long Seven, who had been smiling all this time, suddenly spoke words of ridicule. This was the result of his mind being shaken. Zhang Ji immediately put on an appearance of humility and eagerness to learn. She blinked her eyes at Long Seven and asked, "Middle level? Are you talking about the middle level of the mental world?" Long Seven did not answer. Ever since his Deep Blue Walker squad suffered a crushing defeat 2 months ago, his temperament had stabilized quite a bit. His mind was shaken for an instant. He had already recovered his calm, but he would not waste his energy in a meaningless domain. This was not the time to tease and flirt. He needed to focus all of his attention on Luonan. On the podium, the number 1 assistant had just come to a standstill. This caused the complex skeletal neural network within its body to appear more and more clearly in front of the audience. During this time, Long Seven was not only watching, but he was also subconsciously making calculations with his hands. Of course, this was supported by the corresponding calculation module. All of the calculation results were directly displayed in his built-in database for comparison. Under these circumstances, how could he have the leisure to pay attention to other people? Zhang Ji was embarrassed and speechless. Seeing that she had bumped into a rebuff, the live broadcast room was filled with consolation and indignation. There were also spectators ridiculing her. But Zhang Ji herself was not in the mood to watch these trivial things. She quickly changed her perspective. She not only observed Long Seven, but she also observed the relatively famous Xia City ability users in the venue. She observed their reactions to Luonan's series of actions. Long Seven could lie to her, but not everyone could lie to her. Then Zhang Ji saw more and more people, especially those elite ability users who had been famous for a long time, cast their gazes at the podium in a short dozen seconds. At the same time, she also discovered a rather strange detail. Many people closed their eyes during this time, but it did not seem like they were drowsy. Most of their faces displayed a focused expression, or even more obvious expressions of surprise and emotion. The live broadcast camera locked onto these people's faces. God knew that a dozen seconds ago she was going to lock onto these guys who were yawning and crying. They both had their eyes closed, but the feeling was completely different. Seeing this situation, Zhang Ji had a flash of inspiration. She suddenly understood how to verify it. She spoke very quickly in the live broadcast room. "Forgive me for not being able to support such a course with my professional knowledge, but my curiosity is about to explode. Don't you want to know what they perceive after they close their eyes? If I didn't understand it wrongly, the middle zone that Mr. Long Qi mentioned is the classic 3 levels, 1 zone, 1 domain standard. For the time being, I believed his sincere mockery. In that case, I could only experience the magic that was embedded in the middle layer for myself. Everyone, if any of you were there, please bear witness with me." After saying that, Zhang Ji adjusted her breathing slightly and aimed the floating camera on her shoulder at her face. Then she closed her eyes. He closed his eyes to block out the disturbance in the live broadcast room, but another message came in with a stronger momentum. In the very first second, Zhang Ji's face showed clear shock and shock. Her lips and teeth had already cracked open and a muffled voice floated out. "That light, I saw that light. How many people were there in the hall?" The live stream immediately exploded. "What are you talking about? What's the use of just talking? 0 points for acting, -1 point for sincerity. Serious regional discrimination. Why do I feel like it's some kind of bewitching spell?" At this time, a few people in the hall who still had the mood to fight back. "Scumbags outside the hall, don't make so much noise. It's affecting my typing while kneeling. I don't know if it's the middle zone or not, but I can still see this assistant number 1 when I close my eyes, and it seems to be clearer. There's an imprint on the mental level, right? Then why can't I see it when I close my eyes? Idiot, you're on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. The argument in the livestream room was intense. At this time, Xianxia finally sorted out her initial experience. She closed her eyes and tried to repeat it clearly. Although my eyes were closed, I did see the assistant number 1 formed by light. It did appear on the mental plane. I believe that anyone with basic abilities would be able to see it. Its internal structure is even clearer than the visual result. But I can't distinguish the authenticity of the structure, its stability and its related functions. After all, I'm not a spiritual type ability user. The highest record I've ever reached on the mental level is only the middle zone of the shallow zone. And the light on the assistant number 1 shines, from a position I can't touch. Of course, this is just a description. I can only say that it exceeds the depth I can reach. Xianxia had already tried her best to describe what she sensed, but things on the mental level were very vague. No matter how big the imagination of the 30,000 viewers in the live broadcast room was, it was difficult to completely match their brainwaves with Xianxia's. Therefore, the contradictions and debates continued. The flames of war were still spreading in the live broadcast room and the association's main forum, and there was no sign of it stopping. What the hell is using strokes and projected light to interfere with the mental level? Illusion, it's definitely an illusion. Can't you see? That Long Qi is a shill. This is Xia Fei's usual trick. Not long ago Gao Tianxia was even sucking up to Sprinkler Man. Haha, so the humanoid infrasound formation is an illusion and that operation team from the headquarters is just an illusion, right? The government and the military's crisis assessment team are all on drugs, right? If they can accomplish this with pure light, then I'll admit that it's an illusion. I heard that Xia City's psychic wave network can engrave thoughts into form and carry out effective transmission. Are there any brothers and sisters in Xia City who are willing to make things convenient for them? The transfer gate is here. It's fake. It's so blurry that I can't see anything clearly. Xia Fei is going all out to suck up to them. There would never be an end to this kind of dispute and clamor. There were also those who wished for the world to be in chaos. They spammed the transfer gate on the society's main forum, inviting Ari and the mysterious Pandora, who were also at the center of the storm, to pay a visit to Xianxia's live broadcast room to express their stance and attitude. Pandora had practically confirmed the corresponding relationship between Luo Nan and Sprinkler Man with a solid hammer. She hid herself and her name no longer making an appearance. As for Ari, she maintained her usual high-profile style. She came to Xianxia's live broadcast room under the escort of a bunch of forum trolls and greeted the 30,000 viewers. The platform where the live broadcast room was hosted definitely wouldn't let go of this opportunity to stir up more popularity. They immediately contacted Xianxia's behind-the-scenes team and treated Ari as a special guest of their live broadcast. They urgently granted him permission to jointly broadcast from thousands of miles away. Of course, Ari was currently in Chan City. He wasn't at the conference site. The so-called live broadcast was just a few malicious and sarcastic words to continue drawing the hatred from Xia City. This kind of action was like standing on the wind. Although it was easy to make money, it wasn't impossible for him to be blown away by the wind. With Ari's family business, he wouldn't be greedy for this little bit of profit. The platform was just making plans. Who would have thought that Ari would actually agree to it? It was as if he really had an irreconcilable hatred with Sprinkler Man or Luo Nan. The live broadcast platform may have made a deal, but they felt that they had hit the jackpot and were muddle-headed. Ari really had an extremely professional spirit and an even greater obsession. When his face appeared in front of all the viewers in the live broadcast room, they immediately scolded. I never knew why there was a person like Sprinkler Man in this world. But after witnessing it today, I immediately understood. He's a typical pitiful person who desperately seeks recognition because of his family's flaws. Yes, I definitely won't deny his talent. After all, a guy who can cause so much trouble in just a few months is worthy of admiration. But from the frequency and intensity of his trouble, I can see that he's someone who desperately wants to show off and stir up trouble. He's an egoist who wants everyone to praise him, flatter him, look up to him and fear him. You don't believe me? Look at the formatting theory he's been advocating all this time. That purely egoistic argument is disgusting. Ari's eloquence was extremely good. He talked without end and he hung around the forums all year round. His debating skills were even more outstanding. He formed his argument with just a few sentences. Then he began piling up evidence. Regardless of whether it was true or false, his momentum was overwhelming. He had an extremely lofty attitude. In the front row of the circular conference room, Zhang Yingying was originally happy with Luo Nan's wonderful work. But when she saw the demonic wind blowing in the live broadcast room, she nearly wanted to reach out her hand through the screen and slap Ari's mouth. This bastard is relying on old man Gongqi. He's shooting his mouth off from afar. Why do I feel like this guy is shrinking back? Bamboo Pole was using the newly applied psychic wave network to calculate space. He was deducing the structure of Luo Nan's #1 assistant. He took the time to reply, he's making a personal attack right off the bat. It only shows that he has a guilty conscience. Papercut also agreed. Yeah. He doesn't even talk about the dripping sword or the condensation ring. I'm afraid he doesn't believe that Nanster can't do it in a spray can. Zhang Yingying curled her lips. I've already left a message in the thread. The live broadcast room is spamming as well. That guy just pretends not to see it. Oh right. He suddenly thought of a new move. She chuckled and stood up. She strode her long legs to the back of the line. She arrived at the row where the live broadcast booth was being set up in a few steps. Zhang Ji still had her eyes closed right now, sensing the interference of #1's assistant on the mental plane. She didn't steal Ari's limelight for a moment. Long 7, who was on her left, looked 10 times more serious than she was. Zhang Yingying didn't disturb the two for now. Instead, she faced a veteran member of the Xia City branch to Zhang Ji's right. She revealed a smile and said, Brother Lu, let's switch seats. Please sit in the front row. I'll take advantage of the live broadcast to become an internet celebrity. Brother Lu laughed heartily. He got up and gave up his seat in a straightforward manner. Zhang Yingying thanked him with a beaming smile. She sat down next to Zhang Ji without any trace of politeness. She stuck her head out and aimed it at the camera. She was so close that the brim of her hat almost hit the camera lens. When such a youthful, beautiful and rebellious girl appeared on the live broadcast interface at such a close distance, it was no surprise that a wave of wolf howls arose. Ari, who was in the middle of piling up arguments for herself, was also stunned. Then she saw the girl raise 2 middle fingers and send a greeting. Say hello to your mom, Mr. Mommy's baby who can't afford to lose from a honey jar. Oh. Too direct. Too violent. But please allow me to lick the screen and pay my respects. Honey jar Mommy's baby. What a domineering nickname. Ari, just accept it. In the end, it didn't matter if it was the secular world or the inner world as long as they were on the internet. The majority were still people who wanted to see the world in chaos. At this time, Zhang Ji also opened her eyes helplessly. Zhang Yingying sent her a sweet smile. Beauty, you don't mind having another guest, do you? No matter what sort of undercurrent surged after the new guest recommended himself, these 2 beautiful women who were very pleasing to the eye quickly became familiar with each other. They began to interact frequently, for example taking selfies with each other with a peace sign and so on. As for Ari, sorry, it would be best for him to wait for the next opportunity to speak. Regardless of the reactions of the people inside and outside the venue, Luo Nan's creation of Assistant #1 was not to form a selling point. It was to help the participants focus their attention and get into the rhythm of listening attentively as soon as possible. Luo Nan looked at the mental world within the venue and saw that it was gradually becoming orderly and orderly. He knew that the time was almost right, so he ended the demonstration and continued speaking. You see, I didn't pour any other power into it. The tiny bit of energy from the projector is enough to leave an imprint on the mental plane through the configuration. The barrier between the material and the mental doesn't seem that far away, does it? Some people in the venue chuckled lightly, but there were even more people who stared at Assistant #1 with serious expressions. They wanted to dig out deeper mysteries from within. Last month, in the flagship store of Fudong Avenue's Frost River Reality, a rich second generation who isn't even an ability user used this method to summon a human-faced arachnid. It was just a high imitation and it was mixed with a few special substances. However, the principle was more or less the same. It was an experiment by the order of justice, and the final result wasn't too wonderful. You should have heard of it. Luo Nan spoke of another anecdote in passing. This time, it was the order of justice's turn to be unjustly attacked. However, Luo Nan did not become fond of the new and loathe the old. Therefore, we should believe that once we grasp the corresponding techniques, It won't be difficult to enter this domain. Here I want to thank Quantum Corporation and the Order of Justice. They helped me confirm a few things. There were people below the stage who laughed. There were even people who turned their heads to look at Long 7. As for Long 7 himself, he faced the live broadcast camera. His lips only curled up imperceptibly. Let's take the assistant number 1 as an example. Everyone should be able to see that it uses the nervous system as its main axis. Aside from this, we can't find a human system that can carry energy and information at the same time. Moreover, it can be easily controlled and changed. Quantum Corporation is clearly making a fuss about this, and the Order of Justice's high imitation production line was born from this. Luo Nan held an electronic pen and pointed at the assistant number 1. According to the distribution of the neural network and the structure of the Tower of Babel, Luo Nan introduced a few basic divisions to everyone. This was a rather dry and professional explanation, but it was also the part that resembled a real classroom the most. It embodied Luo Nan's reserves of knowledge. Long 7 listened attentively. He made an evaluation in his mind and formed a corresponding written report. This was the duty of an observer, but what he needed to do was not just this. In reality, what he saw with his eyes, coupled with the various high-end detection equipment installed on his body, transformed the various situations within the circular conference room. This included the observation data of Luo Nan and Miss 2000th. The official name should be C2834 test subject, into segments of information flow. The information was loaded with electromagnetic waves, and it was transmitted in a directional direction. Even if Zhangji was not present, certain people and certain powers would not miss out on such a great opportunity to directly gather information. In this way, the information from Xia City was transmitted through satellites and special signal transfer equipment across the boundless ocean. It also crossed inconceivable space barriers and was transmitted to some extremely secretive channel. However, it did not immediately appear. Long 7 had already adjusted the priority level twice during this period of time, emphasizing the importance of this information. But compared to the long-distance conference that was currently being held, it was far from being of importance. However, judging from a relatively fair standard, the long-distance communication that was currently being carried out did not seem to be an extremely important formal conference. It was more like a casual chat. The current topic just so happened to involve Luo Nan. It was originally just a joke, but many people want to make it real. Are you sure you want to take out 2,000th of 1,000? That will depend on the intentions of our chief scientist, the technical leader. At the very least, we need his signature. Mr. Li Wei's intentions are very clear. As long as C2834 remains within our monitoring range and is still within our reach, then it can be considered that the experiment is still ongoing. However, he doesn't wish for others to openly plagiarize his results with the same goal. Then do you want to talk to Ouyang and Wu Jiong on the phone? Then it would be better to directly contact the formatting theory kid. Right now, he is the most direct factor affecting C2834. And just last week, Jean, that wild hunter, inexplicably disappeared in the outer seas of Xia City. It is very likely that he is already dead. The last A-rank ability user that met such a result was Jean. Hell, that merchant Jean I'm talking about, he at least left behind some ruins. But this hunter Jean, he only left behind a baffling pile of bones to the world. That merchant Jean you're talking about, even though his nickname is Can't Exchange Gold, his real name is Jean. It has 4 tones similar to the sound of Jean. The tone of the conversation between the two people in the conference was a bit intense, but this couldn't even be considered a quarrel. At most, they were showing off their foresight. Perhaps opening a bet later would be a good choice. The topic regarding the region of Xia City didn't continue for too long. It was rare for them to chat. It was time for a conference. The scope covered was very wide. The government, the military, the inner world, the moon, Mars, Europa. They had more or less set foot in every domain that the human world covered. This was the power of capital. The conference didn't last long. Most of the virtual figures were quickly removed from the virtual conference room. In the end, there was only one person left. He looked quite young. He had black hair and black eyes. He wore a loose white robe and stood barefoot at the edge of the virtual space. He made a gesture and the light and shadow shifted. The virtual conference room displayed a dark gray world map. Only the contours of the land and the sea could be vaguely seen. However, under the gray background, nearly 100 stars were scattered all over the earth. They were the 88 large metropolitan areas, as well as various important bases in the wilderness and the sea. At this moment, Xia City was flashing with red light. This person focused on the map and was about to click on it. A silhouette of a white youth appeared not far from him. Wang, I forgot to ask you just now. Where are you now? Deep blue. Well, that's a pity. The weather in Luoyang City is pretty good today. If you're here, maybe we can go play a few rounds of golf and talk about the shares. Herman, save it. If you keep messing around, old Herman will blow your head off with a gun. Wang Yu laughed. He was a major shareholder of Quantum Corporation. His family was a big player in the global market long before the Third World War. They also had the military background of a great country at that time. During the war, they played with firearms to the sky. In the early days after the war, he used his huge capital to preside over many successful mergers and acquisitions, thus establishing his family's position in the post-war world capital market. Wang Yu didn't have a real position in Quantum Corporation. He only had the position of CEO of a financial company in the top 50. However, he relied on a spider web of equity structure and interpersonal relationships to share the world's authority with a few people. As for Herman, his family belonged to an even more purely financial crocodile. He didn't have the aptitude of an ability user, not even a little bit. That was why he held a terrible and malicious attitude towards all ability users, including everything that extended from them. The old man has gone crazy from wanting to prolong his life. He has already become a self-righteous idiot. But the Deep Blue and Bloodline projects are even more stupid. There's also the LCRF. Our family's investments are all in the Pacific Ocean. Don't be like this, Herman. You're still young. You'll easily see and obtain a lot of incredible things. Old Herman, on the other hand, must first fight with the god of death. Wang Yu casually comforted him, but he still opened the message that had been waiting in line for a long time. Light and shadow were arranged in the virtual conference room. With the support of technology that didn't care about costs, the scene of the circular conference room appeared before his and Herman's eyes practically without any delay. And at the same time, the important segment marked by Draconic 7 was also replayed in the form of windows. The two were synchronized and the receiver made the choice. It just so happened that Luonan pointed at Quantum Corporation during the important segment. Herman used an exaggerated tone to express, the formatting theory kid. Wang, he has true love for Quantum Corporation. Chapter 557. 2 minutes later, a slightly hunchbacked old man walked in with hurried footsteps. He was still panting slightly when he arrived before Wang Ju. His expression was extremely respectful. Mr. Wang, I'm here. What can I do for you? Wang Yu waved his hand, indicating for him to find a seat. The hunchbacked old man bowed to Herman's hologram before cautiously sitting on the chair next to him. During this time, he naturally saw the circular conference room image transmitted over from afar. Especially the youngster on the podium. The structure of the figure of light behind him was quite eye-catching. But he didn't recognize it for a moment. It wasn't until he sat down, trembling with fear and trepidation, that his cognitive ability returned to normal. Buo Luonan? The hunchbacked old man opened his mouth slightly. He really didn't expect to receive this kind of information at this time. He couldn't help but wonder why a major investor like Wang Ju had called him over. He was a bit confused for a moment. Although Herman was most concerned about whether or not his investment would be effective, he was idle right now. He was more or less interested in gossip. He said with a smile, Professor Yen, how does it feel to see your enemy? Yen Hong could only respond to this question. He looked at the hologram once more, his gaze carrying a dense hostility. He could only suppress it for a while. Yen Hong wasn't a good person to chat with right now. Herman soon lost his interest. In fact, he had no interest in the so-called training sessions of the Ability User Society. He casually took out a golf club from the golf bag next to him and cleaned it. Leave the professional matters to the professionals. Wang, I think your best choice is to come to Luoyang City. I can wait for you for 2 hours. Wang Ju smiled without saying anything. A few dozen seconds later, a middle-aged man with a shiny head entered Wang Ju's room on a maglev hoverbike. Compared to Yen Hong, he was much more casual. Hey boss, the moment you pulled me out of the lab, I already heard the sound of you throwing your investment into the ocean. Herman, who was nearly 10,000 kilometers away, laughed out loud. Jeff, I'll give you a bottle of 23-year-old red wine for saying that. Jeff stood on the hoverbike. He had no intention of getting off. He just sneered. Mr. Herman, instead of letting that bottle of red wine eat dust under my bed, why don't you put down your golf club and sign the application form? To be honest, the progress of the experiment is not ideal. I need people and materials. Hearing Jeff mention progress, Yen Hong, who was a little distracted, subconsciously shivered and woke up. Seeing that Jeff was about to leave, he hurriedly stood up as if there were thorns on his butt. It would have been better if he hadn't stood up. Jeff immediately sensed his presence. Jeff raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh, Professor Yen, you're here too. By the way, I'm seriously dissatisfied with your team's progress. Not only are you the last of the 4 divisions in Deep Blue, but you've even caught up to the military's Division AB. After all, you're the founder of this project, and the test subject is your son." Yen Hong stammered, "Yonghua isn't cooperating." Jeff said coldly, "I won't cooperate even if I have to be sampled dozens of times a day. Now is not the stage where luck is the main factor. You have to have a train of thought. You can recall the stage where you had a genius burst of inspiration. That stage is enough for you to achieve success and recognition, but it isn't enough for you to just sit around and wait for death in Project Deep Blue." Yen Hong's head was about to be buried in his pants. Wang Ju stopped Jeff from reprimanding his underlings any further. He brought the matter back to the main topic. "Right, you do. Go back to the laboratory to solve the problems. I asked you two to come over because the important information sent by the frontline observers involves a few professional problems. I hope to hear your opinions." He let the image flow once more as he spoke. Luo Nan was still dividing the configuration of the figure of light on the main screen. The window displayed the moment he molded the figure of light. Yen Hong's face twitched when he saw Luo Nan's demonstration. His expression turned ugly. However, Jeff just sneered, "The Deep Sea Type 4 is technology from 2 generations ago. It's a castrated model. It has long since been eliminated in the laboratory. We're currently using the 6th generation. The main indicators of internal combustion, interference, conversion, and so on have been improved by over 3 times. This little trick of the structure of light has a bit of a technical content. The Order of Justice has already shared this structural model with us some time ago. It's nothing amazing." Herman wiped the cue stick seriously. He didn't even raise his head as he laughed. "Jeff, I like your tone. You make me feel like my investment is worth it." Wang Yu laughed at first, but soon her brows furrowed. "Hold on. The laboratory is the 6th generation. It's commercially available. I mean the one currently circulating in the market. I remember that it's the 3rd generation." Herman suddenly raised his head. Jeff blinked. He didn't really care about this sort of thing. It was Yen Hong who answered cautiously. "Currently, the company and the military are mainly using the 3rd generation built-in design. A portion of the elite personnel have switched to the 4th generation dynamo core. Overall, it's still a trial run. According to the company's internal procurement plan, they hope to have all of the core replaced within the next 2 years. As for the military's laboratory, they've already begun research on the 5th generation minimalist core. However, the large-scale procurement is still mainly based on the 4th generation dynamo core technology. I remember that we just signed a framework agreement last month." Yen Hong was suddenly stupefied when he said this. Across from him, Wang Ju pinched his brows and laughed bitterly. Herman stopped wiping the cue stick. The smile on his face gradually faded. "Hey Jeff or Yen Hong. You two better speak clearly to me. Don't try to fool me with things in the research field. I want to know right now how much this little brat's words will affect the project I'm investing in." Jeff shrugged. Yen Hong, on the other hand, didn't know how to continue. Neither of them opened their mouths. In the end, it was Wang Ju who helped them out. "It's probably the same as the product's technology being cracked. It's possible to imitate a product that can compete with us. Something like that." Yen Hong nodded. "Yes, it's exactly like that." Herman's face became even more gloomy, but his attitude had already become serious. His train of thought was also very clear. "Yes, I remember now. Is it because the Deep Sea Type 4 dynamo core fell into their hands? Now it's the lawyer team's turn." Wang Yu laughed. "Herman, that's the inner world. The inner world is the same, remember? As long as we nod our heads, the so-called Core Technology Protection Act will be passed and implemented next Monday. The Ability User Society must support it and abide by it. Otherwise, I'll kick out all of their project investments, including the LRCF. I'll make those old fogies who are counting on it to hang on to their lives die." Wang Yu strolled around the room barefoot. The problem is that the military may have a different view. The Star Alliance Committee is also happy to see this situation. Herman waved his cue stick. His eyes were cold. What about the lobbying team? I spend billions every year just to let them shoot brain cells into the Pacific Ocean? It's just that the patent barrier isn't that safe. If you want to be more comprehensive, then you need to have certain plans in terms of raw material control, related equipment and production lines. Wang Yu thought for a bit before asking Jeff and Yen Hong. From what you guys see, will that formatting theory kid continue to derive new things? Yen Hong looked at the image of the current speech. He hesitated for a bit. Seeing that Jeff didn't intend to speak for the time being, he braced himself and answered, "It seems that he hasn't." Moreover, the design philosophy of the 5th and 6th generations is already very different from the previous generations. If the current 7th generation succeeds, it will be almost completely separated from the previous philosophy. If Luonan deduces according to the philosophy of the 4th generation, he should. It just so happened that Luonan was talking about the basic standards of a qualified configuration in the circular conference room. From the material to the mental, or vice versa, from the mental to the material and soul. That's where the extraordinary power lies. Some people in the conference room were dissatisfied with this statement. The standard of connecting is too vague. We have the concept of space on the material plane. Passing through is passing through. But what about the mental plane? Luonan's answer was, the structure of thoughts condensed on the mental plane. The shallow zone, the middle zone, the deep zone, even the abyss region and the polar region are all possible. Existence is connection. Hearing this, Jeff's mouth finally twitched. He rarely agreed with Yen Hong's statement. Currently, it seems that the kid's path is still the same on the mental plane. We were affected by these old ways of thinking before. It was Teacher Li Wei who planned a new path that allowed us to have our current breakthrough. And if we continue to go around in circles here, even an extreme materialist will walk further than them. Wang Yu and Herman glanced at each other. Wang Yu asked, just a change in philosophy can affect the results of the research? Of course, there are also the large amount of details that carry the philosophy. Jeff subconsciously glared at Yen Hong. Our current research is tracing back a certain missing key from back in the day. Right now, everyone in the circular conference room was dissatisfied with Luonan's increasingly empty statement. If it could be realized, then why would I be here listening to the lecture? Whether it's connection or existence, they are all meaningless concepts to us. Chickens are born from eggs. Eggs are born from chickens. Isn't that all? Don't tell me that there isn't a more detailed standard or procedure. Luonan remained calm in the face of the questioning. Everyone here possesses a certain amount of aptitude. Even if they haven't awakened, they either have abundant blood and energy, enough to shake the mental barrier, or they have enough soul strength, enough to interfere with the material plane. Then what are you guys lacking? Structure. A stable structure. Jeff's brows furrowed when he heard a certain word from Luonan's words. He temporarily stopped the conversation and turned his head to watch attentively. And at this time, Luonan rejected his previous statement in the blink of an eye. We should change the way we put it. Stability. A stable structure. Jeff's eyelids twitched. Yen Hong raised his head and looked over in a daze. Why do I say this? It's because I've had a thought in my head these past 2 days. Maybe we're like hamsters trapped in a cage. Every day we step on the cage and run forward, but in reality we're just running in circles. If we want to make a breakthrough, we must first settle down and find our own positions. Everyone in the conference room was at a loss. Luonan also hesitated for a moment before continuing to speak. What I mean is that on the mental plane, let's not talk about the abyss region and the polar domain. As for the rest, perhaps there has never been a shallow zone, a middle zone, or a deep zone. There is only our own force field and space of consciousness. It's a cage that we toss and turn around in. Bang! Yen Hong hastily took a step forward. His shin collided with the short table in front of him and he bent over in pain. On the other side, Jeff pressed the button of the maglev balancing car by mistake. He directly collided with the bent-over Yen Hong. The two collided into each other, but they didn't even make a sound. They just turned their heads to look at the scene that was still moving forward. Chapter 558. Within the circular conference room, Luonan's words did not have an earth-shattering effect. Most of the participants looked at each other in dismay. There was a hint of "here we go again." There were far too many theories and conjectures regarding the essence of the mental plane ever since the appearance of extraordinary powers in this world. When people's brains opened up, what ideas couldn't they come up with? Looking at the database of headquarters right now, there were tens of thousands of related theses. Especially during the first few years of headquarters establishment, a conjecture regarding the essence of the mental plane would pop up practically every day. It didn't matter if it was from idealism to materialism, from high latitude to low latitude, from science to religion. There were all sorts of theories. However, in recent years, the hypotheses regarding the mental plane had already been unified by the practical multi-layered structure represented by the 3 layers, 1 region and 1 domain. In other words, it didn't involve the essence. It just observed the phenomenon and sought support in practice. Luo Nan tossed out his cage theory at this time. It couldn't be considered a subversive method. However, what should come would come. When the people inside and outside of the conference room digested the words he proposed, many people couldn't care less about the standpoint of Xia City. Voices of doubt arose. Do you have any evidence to support the theory you proposed? There are many extraordinaries who have expressed their support for the higher dimensional essence of the mental world. Are you doubting their results? If there are no shallow zones, middle zones, and deep zones, then could it be that everything we experience in our daily cultivation and combat is just an illusion? The mental plane is as vast as the sea. Every inch deeper requires an enormous risk. Then you tell us that all of this is just a competition with ourselves? Luo Nan was surprisingly calm in the face of this wave of questioning. It was practically a group attack. I must respect the direct experiences of my predecessors, including all ability users. It is impossible for me to completely deny past experiences. After all, before we clearly understand the essence of the mental plane, we all rely on experience to do things. Our own experiences are extremely important. They are the only things we can rely on. I proposed this theory just like the thousands and thousands of similar theses in the Society's database. They are all trying to explain the phenomenon from a new angle. They aren't completely denying it. What I proposed isn't an essence theory. In fact, if we investigate the meaning of this part, including the classical propositions of matter and mind, consciousness and self, they can rise to the philosophical level at any time. Even if it is substantial knowledge, the textbooks of neuroscience and psychology explain it far more clearly than I do. What I'm going to do today is just a hypothesis and the reasoning based on this hypothesis. I'll also tell you a few stories. Luo Nan spoke with fervor and assurance on the stage. In the front row below the stage, the group of friends and relatives were whispering to each other. These words are quite experienced. It doesn't seem like something Boss Luo would say. Lesson preparation is still effective. The plan was rejected, but perhaps the polite words were not rejected. Hee hee. Of course Luo Nan was able to sense the doubts of his friends and relatives. He blinked his eyes. Sure enough, there were many intelligent people in this world. In a rush, he really couldn't say such comprehensive words, but if he had a secretary he could do it. He Yuan took advantage of the gap in the crowd's suspicions to send over the corresponding speech. Luo Nan just read it and nothing more. The time and energy saved allowed him to sort out his ideas on the spot. After he finished his polite speech, his train of thought became much clearer. Next was Luo Nan's own display. I know a friend. His strength is out of the ordinary. Part of the drawing technique was learned from him. He should be considered to be on the mental side, at least according to our standards. But the problem lies in the fact that my friend has never acknowledged the existence of soul strength in the mental plane. He believes that what passes through our surroundings and carries our strength are only material waves that contain special information and unique laws. This is a pure dimensional user. I'm not used to his concept, but this doesn't hinder his strength. It also doesn't hinder me from using the techniques he taught me. Isn't this too strange? The crowd below the stage was buzzing with low voices, but it was clear that everyone was very focused. Luo Nan continued to speak. This point can be extended even further. The technology companies that receive traditional education as well as government and military researchers will find it hard to accept our idealistic theory. But the results of the deep blue walkers and the burners have still appeared. Back to us ability users. It's useless to talk about theories. As long as we enter our observational scale, allowing the mental and material to produce an interference effect, then our abilities will have meaning. From the looks of it, it doesn't matter what kind of explanation you give. Only if you and I can put it into practice will it have meaning. Luo Nen used an example to defend his point of view. And in the live broadcast room, special guest Ari sneered, "I've said so much, but it's actually just one sentence. I'm talking nonsense. You guys do as you please." Another special guest, Zhang Yingying, also sneered, "Why do I hear that trash can't keep up with the pace? I can understand that." Bamboo Pole and the others in the front row were also paying attention to the live broadcast room. They all face-bombed when they heard what was said. Right now, Luo Nan officially began to expound on his point of view. Then I'll assume a situation like this. Let's not consider the mental plane. Let's not talk about the shallow, middle, or deep layer. Let's assume that the mental dimension and the material dimension are identical and unified on the plane of perception. There's nothing else. Under normal circumstances, we are the same as ordinary people. We rely on our bodily functions that are built on the foundation of matter to perceive the external world. The so-called functions are the five senses and the like. But as long as you have the most basic knowledge of neuroscience, you will be able to understand that on this plane, our bodies only receive external photons, gas molecules, sound waves, and other information stimuli. The various nerve cells react, and then we collect our experiences and memories over a long period of time. They are pieced together into a picture of the world in a certain pattern. We are like a self-learning machine. The most valuable product we produce is our consciousness. But this consciousness can't be seen, can't be touched. It seems to exist within our bodies, but we are unable to find it through any scientific basis. Yes. On the level of ordinary people, we are receivers, analysts, and architects. We are in a black room where cells are pieced together. Genes are the dominant basic model. We organize the material components that are sent in from the inside and the outside. We assemble them into the appearance that we are used to, forming our subjective feelings. For example, student Zhang Yingying. I feel that she is young, cute, and beautiful. Her flattery really makes me feel good. But for some people, it is extremely likely that they will have a completely different appearance. The entire venue roared with laughter. Zhang Yingying grinded her teeth and gave Luo Nan a thumbs up. The bullet screen in the live broadcast room flew. The frequency of comments on the forum increased dramatically. Who's Zhang Yingying? Idiot. She's the most beautiful one among the guests. Can I ask what Zhang Yingying looks like in the eyes of God Ari? If she's not blind, then she's definitely a beauty. Of course, whether or not she's infuriating is another matter. It's fine as long as she can make it. Get out of the way, everyone. I'm calling the police. Her Majesty Empress Wu, someone is hitting on your sister. Don't say anything. This is such a long and tedious theory lesson. I'm relying on Sister Yingying to survive. Luo Nan took in the restlessness of the emotions inside and outside the venue. His expression didn't change. He suddenly asked, "Then when did this situation begin to change?" He didn't expect the others to answer. He gathered his attention and answered his own question. I think that for the fleshly side, it should be the aggregation of the body's functions. It should be the extraction of energy that surpasses the limits of the body. It should be controlled purely by the consciousness. It should be stored in the internal organs and released into the world. For the mental side, perhaps it should be the release of mental senses. Whether it's the fleshly side or the mental side, we are no longer bound to the dark room. There is a period of time, whether long or short, when we extend the feelers of our consciousness. What is illusory becomes real. What is illusory becomes real. In this sense, all ability users are awakened. They all obtain a limited amount of freedom. There is no essential difference. This is one of my theories. Ability users have changed from passive to active. The atmosphere inside and outside the venue was a bit subtle. Sounds pretty good. I was like this back in the day. Passive to active. This theory is quite interesting. Speaking of which, I cried miserably the second I released my mental senses. Who could be more miserable than me? I thought it was an illusion when I first formed my internal energy. I only confirmed it half a month later. Wait a minute. Is this bro praising us? It tastes weird. Some of Luo Nan's words were clichés, but some were rather novel. The new and the old mixed together, and the taste wasn't bad. His gaze swept across the venue and moved to the figure of light beside him. Since we raised this hypothesis, we can continue to push forward. If there really isn't any external mental space, then this fellow, our assistant number one, isn't what we think it is. It isn't a process of being projected onto the so-called common mental plane by some sort of power. Although this is in line with our usual visual experience. Do you remember? According to the hypothesis, there isn't any mental space in between the cage and the cage. There is only the result of assistant number 1 appearing in your perceptual domain. In other words, I have already carved a mark in your domain through the construction of assistant number 1. I have direct contact with you. To put it in a more unpleasant way, I violated you. I took the initiative to violate you and you passively endured it. There were some people in the venue who laughed heartlessly, but there were also many people who suddenly couldn't laugh when they saw Luo Nan's expression. Luo Nan smiled as he continued speaking. Next we will conduct an experiment. We will use assistant number 1. Right now, everyone can see it with their naked eyes. You can also use your mental senses to capture it after closing your eyes. But is this really the result of your active sensing? Everyone please close your eyes. You can sense assistant number 1 right now, right? What about now? Luo Nan snapped his fingers. The 30,000 viewers watching the live broadcast were simply unable to gather together. They could only watch as a slight commotion arose in the venue. Moreover, most people in the venue opened their eyes in the first instance. The commotion became even more intense. Luo Nan asked them, "Did you see it?" Large swathes of people shook their heads. There was a moment just now when assistant number 1 disappeared from their mental senses. But when they opened their eyes, the figure of light was still there. The radiance didn't diminish. Luo Nan gave a simple explanation. Why did such a situation occur? It's because I erased it from everyone's perceptual domain. I will no longer violate you. In other words, I erased the traces of my violation. Luo Nan's gaze met with the people below the stage for a few seconds. He shrugged. Hey. I know many people don't believe me, but it's meaningless. There were quite a few people who didn't listen to me at the time. Their eyes were still open. They can testify that assistant number 1 has always been there. This can also be used to prove that the material space and the mental space are split. You only erased the traces of the mental plane. Someone raised his hand in doubt. What he said was extremely reasonable. Luo Nan nodded. This is indeed the case. Then let's do the next set of experiments. Everyone, please first look at your seat numbers. Figure out the odd and even numbers. This way you can form a contrast with the people beside you. I'll do the same operation as before. Everyone please share your experiences with the people beside you. Oh, hold on. I see that there are voting devices in the seats. How about this? Staff, please open the voting system. Those who see the figure of light, please press the yes vote. Those who don't see it, please press the no vote. We will conduct 3 rounds of instant voting. Begin now. 10 seconds later, the flickering figure of light nearly tormented the people in the venue to insanity. When everyone opened their eyes once more, the restlessness in the venue could no longer be suppressed. The buzzing sounds of discussion turned into rumbling. The participants below the stage discussed and quarreled with the people beside them. They hated that they couldn't overturn the conference room that was over 3 stories high. And the atmosphere on the internet didn't ease up by much. The audience in the live broadcast room couldn't see the flickering changes of the figure of light on the mental plane, but they could see the results displayed on the screen after the 3 rounds of voting. The results of the 3 rounds of voting were 757, 720, 720, 757, 738, 739. There were a total of 1,477 seats in the venue. The 3 results were in line with the total number of people. As for the difference in the number of votes, it couldn't be said to be of much significance. After all, the circular conference room wasn't full. There were many empty seats in the middle. The difference between odd and even numbers couldn't reflect the median number. It could only prove that during the 3 rounds of voting, the differences in the contents of the mental senses of over 1,000 ability users in the conference room had reached a degree that was hard to make up for. On the stage, Luo Nan turned to look at He Yuan. Sister Yuan, can you pull out the data backstage and see the distribution of the true votes? This was a bit of a taboo, but He Yuan still nodded her head. A few seconds later, the distribution of the voting personnel appeared on the large screen in the venue. In the first round of voting, the green dots representing approval and the red dots representing disapproval crisscrossed one by one. Especially in the areas where the number of people was relatively full, One column of red and one column of green formed a neat stripe. The second round was still like this, but the order of red and green was completely reversed. As for the third round, it suddenly became very chaotic. The red and green dots of light were randomly distributed. There seemed to be no pattern at first glance. However, there were people who reacted quickly early on and understood. 738 versus 739? This was the median number. It was exactly half and half. Your math isn't bad. This is amazing. It looks like he's completely under control. How in the world did he do it? Before the sighs could fade away, a picture that had just been processed began to circulate on the society's main forum. It was a simplified diagram based on the distribution of the votes in the third round. It was quite simple to explain. The red dots were distributed as the outer outline, and the green dots were the inner structure. The final result was an image that would be hard for the audience to forget for the rest of their lives. On the podium, the figure of light, assistant number 1, was facing them. The figure of light and the outline of the red and green dots practically completely overlapped. Chapter 559. Luonan also turned his head and looked at the big screen. The statistical results were no different from the image he designed. He nodded and spoke to the audience below the stage. You guys can exchange your opinions. I came up with this experiment design on the spot. I welcome suggestions from everyone if there's anything that isn't rigorous. We can do a fourth group, a fifth group at any time. The noise in the venue gradually subsided as Luonan spoke to this point. The participants looked at each other. Who still wanted to play with this? Right now they wanted to know how the young genius on the stage would conduct his lesson. There was no need to say much on the internet. Disregarding whether Luonan's theory was correct or not, just his ability to manipulate people's mental senses was enough to make tens of thousands of ability users suck in a cold breath. The feeling of emptiness, mystery, and the corresponding imagination and doubts caused by not being present at the venue caused the comments in the live broadcast to explode. The instantaneous intensity caused the special effect of the popularity. Now the specific meaning of the words could hardly be seen, only the layers of flames and shadows burning fiercely. But on the Society's main forum, RT 8313's mission post, or a temporary post that urgently needed to vent, was overflowing with relevant information. It refreshed layer by layer. Meow meow meow. What just happened? I must have come to the scene of a multi-level marketing conference. This isn't scientific. It's the Xia City branch's collective show, right? Previous poster's IQ is touching. Hee hee. You guys are all pretending to be naive, right? This is clearly a live broadcast of an exceptional event. Mr. Spraykin Man violated 1477 people at the same time. He casually manipulated their postures. One moment he put them in a big character. The next moment he put them in a human character. Then 30,000 people including the audience flew away. Only I was able to record everything rationally. Serious face. If reality really is as described, then what's up with the shallow zone, the middle zone and the deep zone? Can we hear this part of the explanation? Is there anyone here who can help me ask? Zhang Ji paid attention to the comments in the live broadcast room. She also received the latest feedback from various channels through the behind-the-scenes team. In the end, she spoke to the 30,000 viewers. Honestly speaking, I'm completely lost right now. There are too many subversive theories and phenomena in Mr. Luo's lesson. What do the guests think? God, Ari, who was thousands of miles away, was in a daze. He didn't expect Zhang Ji to pick him first. He only remembered to control his expression after being stunned for 2 seconds. He smiled and tried his best to speak in a calm tone. Act on your own and explain on your own. There are too many traps to take advantage of in this kind of experiment, and it's hard to gain trust from others. I think that if a person really wants to promote their own theory, they shouldn't use this kind of claptrap method. Instead, they should write a rigorous paper that can withstand the deduction. That way they will be more likely to gain the respect of others. If these comments were made before the 3 experiments, there would be a considerable amount of support on the internet. However, it was a bit too much now. Not to mention the live stream, someone on the forum directly criticized him. What trap? What's in the trap? Can't you say 1, 2, 3? Who's the one who can't stand up to scrutiny? Speaking of which, I'd like to ask, is it enough to fill up a spray can with 1477 people at the same time? F***ck, so this is the true meaning of squirt man? pounding the ground and laughing loudly. A new interpretation of the meaning of squirt man. A small wave of heat stirred up on the internet. Xianxia didn't make any comments. She continued to control the topic of the program and asked Long 7, Mr. Observer? Long 7 hadn't spoken for a long time, but he was certainly one of the most focused people present. He was the same right now. He didn't even spare Xianxia a glance. Xianxia didn't get angry after being rebuffed. She turned her head to look to the other side. Zhang Yingying faced the camera and raised her eyebrows. All of us have been played like idiots by him. Beauty, can you not raise the corner of your lips when you say these words? The complicated positions of the guests gave the audience a bit of topic to talk about at most. The venue quickly quieted down. Luo Nan stood even more quietly behind the lectern. His gaze swept the audience below the stage. The ability users he faced all had their eyes reflect the red and green dots of light on the large screen. And the corresponding light on the mental plane was 100 times more complex than the colors of the real world. Even so, the mental activity in this area still had a trend of convergence. Luo Nan watched the irregular bubbles become regular. The chaotic colors converged toward a pattern. For a typical keeper of order, the continuous changes were truly pleasing to the eye. Especially since he didn't bring out any forceful methods. He just gently guided and stirred the direction a bit. The river surged mightily as he drew. It could be considered quite a sense of accomplishment. As for the larger and more distant threads that were drawn together by the electromagnetic field in the air, although there were signs of convergence, they weren't as obvious as the changes within the venue. Luo Nan was originally here to give a lesson to the ability users of the Xia City branch in the venue. He thought for a bit and tossed the outsiders to the side. He only cared about his own matters. If no one can see through my little trick, then this hypothesis will continue for now. He didn't say anything more. He lowered his head and used his digital pen to draw in his own work area. He only drew a rather dazzling bubble. But thanks to the drawing tools in the work area, a series of similar bubble structures soon appeared. These bubbles formed from incorporeal rays of light were distributed around the figure of light, assistant number 1. The volume wasn't small. Luo Nan even had the leisure to add a similar layer of light to assistant number 1. Luo Nan didn't need to explain much when they saw this scene. The ability users who had been ruthlessly taught a lesson by the willful distribution of votes immediately understood Luo Nan's intentions. This is a cage, right? The lighting in the projection area was quite chaotic, but the members of the conference seemed to be able to see the distorted silhouette of assistant number 1 reflected on the translucent outer membrane of the bubbles. Luo Nan extended his hand and brushed past the bubbles, letting them wander back and forth. It's quite a pity that the light is unable to make them display their proper texture. But it's fine as long as everyone understands our hypothetical situation. You can think of the bubble as each person's self-domain. Perhaps it's some sort of force field, some sort of space, a hybrid interference creation of bodily functions and mental functions. We don't need to delve into its essence for now. We just need to understand. Under our current hypothetical situation, there's no such thing as a public mental space. There are only isolated islands separated between people. When one person's light acts on another person, a connection is born. Do you still remember what I said earlier? We've already gotten used to something since birth. We passively receive information and the corresponding wriggling of neurons, transforming it into a false self-awareness. This habit is so deep that even if we awaken and truly obtain this initiative, we will often confuse it with our previous bad habits. Did you take the initiative to sense the target? Or did the target find you? We must make a judgment in our minds. This judgment is between I and I. Even if we are unable to block the invasion of external forces, we must understand what we actively search for, what we instinctively sense, and what we are forced by others. I just said that we're in a cage. This cage is imprisoning you, but it's also protecting you. And a true awakened should be able to understand the boundaries of their own cage. They should be able to effectively protect and purify their own domain. Moreover, they should take the initiative to reach out and use their own unique methods to touch the boundless heaven and earth of the outside world. Luo Nan stopped speaking to this point. Then he took a deep breath and his gaze swept across the entire audience once more. When he opened his mouth again, his voice grew clearer and more sonorous. This is one of the principles of formatting theory. It's called My Heart's a Prison. Luo Nan suddenly smiled brightly as he faced over 1,000 pairs of eyes in the audience. I'm taking advantage of this opportunity to sell my personal goods. Everyone, please don't mind. A wave of low laughter rose within the audience. It was unknown who started it, but the applause gradually rose. It went from sporadic to surging like a tide. Luo Nan knew that this wave of applause contained elements of politeness. Some were influenced by group consciousness. There was also reverence towards his ability to easily affect the perception of over 1,000 people. There weren't many who were truly convinced by his theory. But when he stood on the stage and was pushed along by the waves of applause, his heartbeat clearly accelerated. The blood that pumped out rushed to his head and face, forcing him to lower his head slightly and take another deep breath. Only then was he able to maintain a calm smile on his face. Luo Nan knew that he couldn't stop. Once he stopped, the turbulence in his emotions would likely destroy the train of thought that he had managed to connect with great difficulty. So he took the initiative to extend his hand. His 2 palms pressed down, making a placating gesture. Luo Nan had always felt that this action was very pretentious in the past. It was the type of extreme narcissism. But as his palms pressed down, the venue really did recover its tranquility within 5 seconds. There was practically no other noise aside from the breathing of over 1,000 people. Luo Nan didn't make a fuss on the mental plane. But right now he had indeed used words, theory and ironclad facts to form an incorporeal whirlpool. It captured the minds of over 1,000 people, causing the emotions and thoughts of these people to rise and fall along with his every word and action. I don't know if there's anyone seated here who has a rich imagination. When I brought up the concept of cage and corresponded it with perception, I called it the perception domain. What is the first thing that comes to everyone's mind? Papercut drew in a cold breath from the front row. By goodness. He's addicted to playing interactive games. Bamboo Pole raised his hand as he sighed. He said in a loud voice, I thought of the extraordinary domain. A wave of sound came from within the venue. Clearly, everyone was shocked by the super high-level concept of the extraordinary standard and the corresponding difference. The surrounding group of friends and relatives gave Bamboo Pole a thumbs up one after another, expressing that this shill was very professional. However, Bamboo Pole didn't give a response. He stared fixedly at the stage. His expression was focused and serious. Luo Nan actually smiled at Bamboo Pole. Thank you, brother Bamboo Pole, for supporting us. My thoughts are the same as yours. After a series of concepts have been clarified in my mind, the first thing that comes to mind is the extraordinary domain. And I believe that the extraordinary domain isn't fundamentally different from our cage. The only paid guest of the live broadcast immediately slapped the table and shouted angrily, sensationalism. However, there weren't many people paying attention to him at this time. Whether it was shocking words or sensationalism, Luo Nan's words were indeed eye-catching. Luo Nan swiped his finger, causing the bubbles surrounding assistant number 1 to become even more turbulent. He even casually popped 2 bubbles in the middle. I believe that there are many people seated here, including our friends watching the live broadcast, who have already unconsciously accomplished the distinction between me and not me. For example, psychic perception. Whether it's the fleshly side or the mental side, ability users are always extremely sensitive to external stimuli. This can be understood as having an instinctive rejection towards the interference and influence of the non-self, after getting used to the scope and nature of the self domain. Many people are just missing the final step. They haven't changed from unconsciously to consciously. They haven't changed their passive emotional disgust into active and substantial defense and counterattack. Bubbles are always weak and unstable. A gust of wind can burst them. But if we push them to a higher level and magnitude, turning them into a balloon, a house, or even a fortress, what would happen? What would happen if we changed them from internal to external, from defense to offense? What would happen? Of course, it would be extraordinary, unbreakable, all-conquering, and murderous. People were always like this. It was hard for them to calm their hearts and think about internal logic, but they were easily inspired by the direct and splendid prospect. As an ability user who didn't want to become an extraordinary, who didn't want to stand at the pinnacle of human evolution. At this moment, who cared whether or not this domain equivalence theory had solid arguments to support it? Over 1,000 pairs of eyes in the venue lit up. Most of the 30,000 viewers in the live broadcast room were the same. Luo Nan shook his head when he spoke to this point. It's quite a pity. From what I can see, the vast majority of people in this world, including ability users, have domains that are unbearably weak. They are like the undulating bubbles on the ocean, appearing and disappearing at any time. There are very few that are tenacious and stable. This includes the vast majority of awakened as well as a considerable portion of B rank. There were small hisses within the venue, and the denunciations online were 100 times louder. But there was still a portion of people with serious expressions and concentrated attitudes. They were all for that illusory yet dazzling possibility. Luo Nan already had complete control over the venue. He no longer spoke of those polite and comprehensive premise sentences. Instead, he directly came to a conclusion. Why is it like this? To put it simply, there's only one reason: a lack of awareness. We've already talked about the main reason, so I won't talk more about it. In that case, when we have awareness, how do we turn awareness into effective action? He gave a slap and all the bubbles outside of number 1 assistant collapsed at the same time. The dazzling colors vanished, causing the internal structure to become even clearer and more transparent. Luo Nan also took 2 steps back at this time. He stood shoulder to shoulder with number 1 assistant. This is where configuration comes into play. It was only now that the vast majority of participants had a feeling of sudden realization. Everything in this enormous circle all came down to this point. Configuration is the skeleton that supports and strengthens the cage. It is also the engine that raises the limits of ability. Your frail bubbles need it to undergo a complete transformation. Luo Nan was like a true teacher. He faced over 1,000 students within the circular conference room, imparting the essentials of truth. Perhaps there were still some problems with his control over the tempo, but his gradual accumulation of control strength eliminated the vast majority of negative effects. He didn't give the participants any time to catch their breaths. He continued speaking. We've touched upon a total of 2 configurations in today's class. One is the configuration of number 1 assistant's dynamo core. I call it the Tower of Babel. The other is the condensation ring. From what I can see, the Tower of Babel is more pure and solid. It completely conforms to the physiological foundation of the human body. Its structure and neural network practically have a one-to-one relationship. There are even some unnecessary places that have been arranged. It's extremely comprehensive and complete. You can see the basic design train of thought from this. The condensation ring is more convenient in comparison. It only connects to one side of the material world, but the exquisiteness of its structure itself surpasses the Tower of Babel by 100,000 times. If we use the structural thinking of the Tower of Babel to correspond, we won't be able to find any traces. There are far too many simplifications and combinations here. All redundancy has been eliminated, and the special nature of soul strength has been fully utilized. When soul strength flows through the constructed guideway of the configuration, the efficiency of work should be over 10 times that of the Tower of Babel. We've finally returned to the condensation ring. Light laughter rang in the conference room. Luo Nan spread his hands. But what can I say? I've already said it before. I'm not Her Majesty Empress Wu. I still can't imagine how she designed such a tiny yet grand structure. I believe that if I have a deeper understanding of the microscopic plane, I can create a condensation ring on the basis of the Tower of Babel. But the volume of this imitation is roughly the size of number 1 assistant. Luo Nan casually drew the structure of the condensation ring. Of course, it was an enlarged version. It was big enough for a fatty to use as a hula hoop. At this scale, the corresponding structure wouldn't display any effect. It just gave off an indescribable sense of joy. The people in the conference room laughed even more. The atmosphere was very good. Luo Nan spoke more and more smoothly. He didn't pretend in the slightest. What I want to do the most right now is to go find Her Majesty Empress Wu and ask her to break down the structural principles of the condensation ring, as well as the simplified rules for merging them bit by bit for me to listen to. Yes, I'm going to go do this after the meeting. If I gain anything, I'll tell everyone. Applause rang out in the conference room as soon as Luo Nan finished speaking. Luo Nan opened his mouth to speak, but the applause automatically stopped. Let's return to reality. Worker Zhai's material says that his direct goal in learning the condensation ring is to strengthen his interference power on the mental and material planes. He wants to attempt to enter a deeper mental plane and satisfy the evaluation criteria of the four-dimensional measurement. The results are gratifying. Then let's analyze why Worker Zhai was able to succeed on the basis of the cage hypothesis. Luo Nan turned his head to look at Worker Zhai, who was waiting on the stage. He smiled at him. Someone in the audience blurted out during this gap. The condensation ring's configuration supports and strengthens his bubble. Luo Nan sent another smiling face. Excellent. This is exactly what I wanted to say. However, I must admit that the configuration of the condensation ring is far too advanced. I can't analyze it in a short amount of time. I can only make a substitution first and use a simpler model to analyze it. Now let's invite our assistant one to take the stage once more. If we exclude the part that burns internal energy, then the remaining half of the Tower of Babel has the same function as the condensation ring. They both operate and transform soul strength. The difference lies in the fact that the condensation ring gives Worker Zhai the most efficient operation method. If the Tower of Babel is an old-fashioned steam engine, then the condensation ring is already on the level of a nuclear reactor in a certain sense. It's just that the Tower of Babel only needs to boil water. The condensation ring also needs a specially processed flaming rod, which is our soul strength. Oh, speaking of which, the Tower of Babel has its advantages. Its foundation has already reached the realm of normal humans. If we follow the structure of the condensation ring and continue to make adjustments and optimizations. Luo Nan suddenly became a bit stupefied. A sudden burst of inspiration shot him out of his normal lecture path and into an even more powerful and mysterious torrent of thoughts. He subconsciously fiddled with Assistant 1, cutting it into two pieces. He ignored the upper half that led to the pure mental domain for now. The electronic pen moved, drawing shadows on the lower half of the structure. At this moment, the principles and requirements of the user manual, the marvelous eye character structure, and the basic configuration before his eyes were vividly linked together. The rigid abstraction became smooth and flexible, and more detailed rules and laws could be seen. Right now, Luo Nan wanted to completely dismantle and reorganize the structure of the Tower of Babel before his eyes. He wanted to compare and even reproduce the outline that grew clearer and clearer in his mind. He Yuan received a message at this time. Let's take a break first. Huh. Luo Nan subconsciously looked at the time. Over an hour had passed without him realizing it. Her Majesty Empress Wu had set a 2-hour lecture for him, and this included around half an hour of question and answer time. If things continued like this, completing the mission would not be a problem at all. This was the result that Luo Nan never expected when he passively agreed to it. He was thankful for the baptism of the eye character. He was thankful for the user manual. Now that the completion points were more or less obtained, the performance points were out of his control. In any case, Luo Nan's goal had already been achieved, and he had fiercely raised his reputation for formatting theory. Next, he just needed to wrap things up in a reasonable manner. Luo Nan definitely had unconditional trust in He Yuan's control of the tempo. Moreover, he really did need a relatively quiet environment right now to digest the burst of inspiration from before. He immediately read according to He Yuan's script. I've been speaking for so long. There are too many theories and hypotheses inside. It's a bit boring. Everyone take a break. If there are any questions that you need me to answer during this time, you can send them over through the conference communication system. I will answer selectively. Of course, you can also directly communicate during the question and answer time. A wave of discontent immediately rose within the conference room. Why did he stop when he just reached the most important part? Luo Nan just smiled at the audience. He then entered the backstage to rest under He Yuan's guidance. In the front row of the conference room, Papercut stretched his body and sighed. Boss Luo certainly has talent in this area. Red Fox, who had remained silent for most of the time, sneered, "Nonsense." Papercut winked at him. "I'm talking about the lecture." Red Fox's lips twitched. "It's also nonsense." Octopus rubbed his head. "Is it really like what he hypothesized? A mental space that encompasses everyone doesn't exist?" Using this line of thought to recall some of his past experiences seems to make sense. Speaking of which, why did he stop? It would have been great if he could have continued talking. Chapter 560. The circular conference room in Xia City had entered its break time, But inside Deep Blue Base, the busy overtime work had just begun. The remote conference room in the base had just been transformed into a large-scale live broadcast room, and it once again displayed its established communication function. An hour ago, the various investors were still wandering about Mars and Europa, but now they were gathered together because of a training course in another conference room on Earth. Perhaps some of them were still in a stupefied state for the first few minutes, but once they understood the relevant situation, especially the meaning of capital and wealth, each and every one of them had grave expressions. But no good suggestions came out for the time being. Although Wang Ju was the convener of the meeting, he didn't open his mouth at this time. He just let Jeff introduce the current response plan of the laboratory. Jeff would rather put a layer of shampoo on his bald head than do such a senseless thing. Right now, he had a sour expression on his face as he supported himself on the hoverbike that had just tripped him. He explained the situation to a group of laymen. Right now, the 4 groups of the project have already started their respective evaluations. On one hand, they are measuring the overlap and conflict between Luo Nan's cage theory and the progress of the various groups in the laboratory. On the other hand, they are evaluating the current revealed train of thought and its effects on the relevant research organizations of the Star Alliance Commission, especially Group AB. Herman had long since flung his golf club away. Right now, his expression was even uglier than Jeff's. He waved his hand in annoyance. Aside from the laboratory evaluation, I want to see the market evaluation even more. Hasn't the laboratory already progressed to the 7th generation? Haven't the 2 generations in between been finalized? Have they formed a production line? If this incident leads to a premature end, what will be done with the initial investment? If losses are unavoidable, will the 7th generation of research be able to reach the market before the cage theory? Will there be a competitive advantage? Will we be able to recoup our initial losses? Will we be used by those fellows to form a meaningless competition? If we want to avoid this, how much additional cost will we have to fork out? 7 or 8 questions in a row practically addressed the worries of all the investors, but none of them were what Jeff was good at or liked. He rolled his eyes and sneered. The judgment of the market needs to be based on the judgment of the laboratory. Before the real results come out. Jeff, I have to tell you that this is not just a money-burning scientific research competition. This is a strategy. Herman had always admired Jeff's straightforward personality. Of course, it was more of his professional ability. But now he really wanted to take back his golf club and hit Jeff's bald head with it. The core problem now is not whether the progress of the formatting theory kit is faster or slower than us, but whether the theory he proposed will change the thinking of all related researchers. Didn't you hear what that kid said at the end? He had already explored the realm of ordinary people and he might even have achieved some results. Our platform is still in the field of military supplies. Results? What can he come up with empty promises? Jeff didn't want to come to such a conclusion, but he really couldn't stand Held's seemingly professional layman's words and couldn't help but retort back. At this moment, Wang Ju finally opened his mouth. There was still a faint smile on his face. Herman and everyone else, let's not get involved in other people's fields of expertise. Let's just speculate based on the reactions of all parties. I believe that while we are doing our evaluation, the various research organizations and Team AB of the Star Alliance Committee are definitely doing their own evaluation as well. Deep Blue's products are products and so are Team AB's products. If we want to consider the losses, those departments that rely on government funding might be even more unwilling to see a sudden change happen than us. And no matter what the final conclusion is, our reaction will definitely be faster than theirs, and we will have more room for error. We will still maintain our advantage. At this moment, another investor spoke up. But that kid is destroying the potential of Deep Blue's industry. He's destroying a market worth hundreds of billions every year. Someone else chimed in. Even if we turn around in time, it will still be hundreds of billions of scientific research investment every year. Held's face was cold as he added, and this is a terrible repellent. Counting from his grandfather's generation, what do you call it in Eastern idioms? Absolutely irreconcilable? Wang Ju shook his head. Emotions are nothing in the face of profit. Yan Hong, who had kept his head down without speaking all this time, felt his scalp tighten when he heard this. He subconsciously raised his head. But the communicator on his wrist vibrated at this moment. Yan Hong's body trembled slightly when he saw the relevant information. He wanted to go to the side to receive it, but he was stopped by Jeff. Is this the result of your team's evaluation? Just say it. No, project it. Yan Hong's face paled. Even though it was Jeff's order, he still hesitated for a few seconds. But he really could not resist the fierce gazes that shot from all directions. He could only project the image of the information that was transmitted into the air. He originally wanted to take advantage of the situation to give a few words of explanation, to give the others a strong first impression, but Jeff, that honest boy, had already sneered. Let's not talk about the theory. The structural overlap is so high. Don't you think your evaluation value is a bit low? Yan Hong's face turned even paler, but he still wanted to explain. Luo Nan's so-called cage theory is an elucidation carried out on the basis of formatting theory. And the substantial configuration structure is based on the deep sea Type 4 dynamo core and the condensation ring. There's nothing new inside. Aside from this, he doesn't possess the relevant experimental conditions. So there's reason to believe that this is just an inferential speech. It's not a rigorous scientific research. Jeff was just about to retort when Herman was very interested in this explanation. He took the initiative to ask, "You're saying that he's not rigorous?" Yan Hong's heart was a bit happy and a bit of color finally returned to his face. He immediately responded, "Of course he's not rigorous. You must know that the configuration probing down to the material plane is not only established on the basis of the nervous system. It is also established on the basis of complex yet controllable genetic variation. The human body has 20 to 30,000 genes, 37 trillion cells, and 240 trillion neuronal synapses. These are the foundations for the configuration to display its effect. Not to mention the mutual mode of action and the transmission of information. The knowledge involved is far too great. The theory is just that, but the structural details between the genes, between the cells, between the neuronal synapses, and between these types of structures are the key factors in creating the configuration. If he were to rely solely on the inferential theory, he would encounter countless difficulties. Every difficulty would require manpower and even human lives to fill in. He would never be able to compare to us in terms of the accumulation of these things. It could be said that Yan Hong talked non-stop. He hadn't had the opportunity to display his abilities like this in recent years. He wanted to continue belittling Luo Nan's theory, but Herman raised an eyebrow. But the accumulation of the military and the government isn't necessarily any worse than ours. If we have the formatting theory kids theory as a guide and use it reasonably, it's not impossible to surpass our progress. Yan Hong shook his head decisively. Impossible. Even with our accumulation, it would take a conservative estimate of 10 to 12 years for us to explore the configuration that can be used on ordinary people and for us to form the final mature product. And this is the result of having a genius like Teacher Li Wei guiding us. What does Luo Nan have? Does he have the ability to control a top-notch laboratory? Does he have the experience of using tens of trillions of funds? No, he doesn't have anything. But his grandfather does. Jeff grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. Luo Yuandao's Wilderness Laboratory is the first top-notch laboratory in the world to systematically research this kind of problem. Even Deep Blue is a follow-up research carried out from Luo Yuandao's experimental foundation. Yan Hong's brain buzzed when he suddenly heard that name. His eyeballs nearly popped out of their sockets. He glared at Jeff with an unprecedented emotion and growled hoarsely, "The direction of Luo Yuandao's theory is fundamentally wrong. Moreover, all of the experimental data is exclusively owned by Quantum Corporation. It has already been shared with Project Deep Blue. This is the truth. The truth." Jeff chuckled. Then could it be that this cage theory, and us who have appeared here because of it, are just spectators watching a joke? Or is it because we are a joke? Yan Hong was already unable to suppress his voice. He was practically screaming, "This is just a hypothesis, a deduction." He used logic to touch upon the correct direction. But freaking scientific research isn't just about logic. Jeff actually lowered his voice. "Yes, scientific research and facts. What do you think of Assistant 1? Yan Hong opened his mouth and opened his mouth again. His tongue was trembling, but the breath in his throat was unable to come out no matter what. At this very moment, the live broadcast from Xia City's circular conference room continued. Luo Nan had already disappeared from the podium, but the figure of light, Assistant 1, was still clearly visible. It was receiving the finger-pointing of the 1,000 ability users on the stage. Some people had already gathered in front of the podium. If it wasn't for He Yuan setting the rules and arranging for the staff to maintain order, perhaps someone would have already gone on stage to touch it. Even so, Assistant 1 still truly existed at such a close distance. From the feedback of the scene, it still existed simultaneously on the material and mental plane. According to the cage theory, it was branded into the perception domain of everyone present. This was the truth. An indisputable truth. Yan Hong was a bit absent-minded. Then a few words unconsciously flowed from his mouth. Maybe we really did miss out on a portion of the data back then. Maybe there were some other things that weren't in the laboratory. That Luo Zhongheng left a portion as his family property, but it was later dug out by this kid. I said back then that I would cut the weeds and pull up the roots.